Russia's navy was trying to hide something irreplaceable. Nestled away in the Novorossiysk port that has become a new base for the Black Sea Fleet after that fleet's Crimean disaster, it was supposed to be safe. But Ukraine found it, and then Ukraine destroyed it. Ukraine has turned night into day and shattered an entire Russian naval port, leaving nothing in its wake, while delivering a death blow to a Russian fleet that was already practically useless in the war. On the night of March 1st and into 2nd, Ukraine unleashed a hellstorm of drones in the direction of what is now the Black Sea Fleet's main base in Novorossiysk. This was no simple attack. Ukraine combined its aerial and maritime drones to unleash a ridiculous amount of firepower that has shattered the Novorossiysk base and taken another 5 ships out of the fleet, supposed to be one of the keys to Russia winning the war that Putin started. We'll get to those 5 ships in a few moments. But before we do, news of the strike comes from the Dosia Shpiona Telegram channel, which also provides some of the numbers. That channel claims that Russia's air defense units have reported a horde of at least 200 attack drones, though we don't have any claims from Russia's defense ministry that these drones were shot down, or that the damage caused by Ukraine was due to drone debris rather than the drones themselves. That's a rarity for Russia, and it tells us that Ukraine hit so hard that not even a ministry that constantly lies about Ukraine's strikes can hide this one. The great irony of this strike is that Novorossiysk is where Russia believed that its Black Sea Fleet warships would be safe. As far back as October 2023, ABC News was reporting that Russia had started to move its warships to this base, as Ukraine's missiles and maritime drones were absolutely shattering the fleet at its previous base in Sevastopol. This was a tactical withdrawal by Russia, the transfer of its most valuable warships to what was supposed to be a protected port that was outside of Ukraine's range, and even if Ukraine struck, contained enough defenses to make the damage negligible. Russia continued this withdrawal into 2024, but Andriy Yusov, who is a representative of Ukraine's main directorate of intelligence, made it clear that Russia's warships wouldn't be able to hide away for long. After the destruction of missile boats, amphibious assault ships, and a corvette, we don't see them at sea. They're trying to change their tactics, to look for new defense tools, but the Ukrainian security and defense forces will not wait. They will continue to act, Yusov said in March 2024. 2 years later, Ukraine is indeed acting. Ukraine has been setting up for a strike like this for a long time, and we'll explain how later in the video, when we go into detail about what this strike means for Russia's ailing Black Sea Fleet. Plus, Ukraine hit a lot more than ships with this latest attack, so stick with us to the end to find out more. But before all of that, we have the headline strikes. 5 Russian warships have been hit, and all 5 are supposed to be playing key roles in Russia's attempts to occupy Ukraine. Let's do a roll call of Russia's warship losses. First on the list is the Valentin Pikul, which United 24 Media says is a Project 266M minesweeper that has sustained significant structural damage during Ukraine's nighttime drone raid. The use of the word minesweeper might trick you into thinking that this is a ship that didn't present much of an attack threat to Ukraine. That isn't the case. While the ship's primary purpose is indeed to sweep for mines, which makes the transit of open waters safer for Russia's other warships, the Valentin Pikul is something of an attacking powerhouse in its own right. Deigel explains more in a profile of the ship, which says that it can also serve as an anti-submarine warfare vessel. Immediately, that shows how this warship could be problematic for Ukraine. Though it isn't deploying full submarines, Ukraine has a stockpile of undersea drones, such as the Sea Babe, that it's used to attack Novorossiysk in the past. The Valentin Pikul could have helped Russia to stave off some of these underwater attacks. Could have, but won't anymore. The ship is also a threat to Ukraine's aerial drones, missiles, and fighter jets. It's loaded with 20 Igla short-range surface-to-air missiles, along with a pair of 30mm AK-306 cannons. Throw a bevy of electronic warfare equipment into the mix, and you get a ship that can protect itself, damage some of Ukraine's vast aerial and naval assets, and is capable of sailing for 3,000 nautical miles, giving it a 15-day endurance. Now it's out of commission. And based on United 24 Media's report, it won't be coming back anytime soon. Next up on the list is a pair of Project 1124M Albatross warships, Yaisk and Kasimov. Both are small anti-submarine ships that Ukraine managed to hit while they were moored in Novorossiysk and, like the Valentin Pikul, they could be problematic for Ukraine's strategy of using undersea drones to cripple more of the Black Sea Fleet and to attack key pieces of Russian infrastructure to support Russia's war effort in the Crimea region, such as the Kerch Bridge. Naval Technology offers a little more information. It says that Project 1124M ships are closer to multi-role vessels than they are to specialized anti-submarine ships. Beyond being capable of tackling underwater threats, the ships can be used for maritime patrols, conducting reconnaissance, protecting convoys, communications, and laying underwater mines. Each ship is manned by 80 crew members. It's unlikely that any were on board at the time of Ukraine's strike, as backed by casualty figures that we're going to share later. But even if Ukraine hasn't killed 160 Russian sailors in this attack, it has taken away their ships. Sailors aren't exactly useful and they can't spend their time on the water, so Russia now gets to spend money paying active members of its military who can do little more than sit around and twiddle their thumbs. The Project 1124M does pack a little bit of firepower to go along with its submarine-focused weapons. Beyond the pair of DTA-53 twin torpedo launchers built into the warship, it has an OSA MA-2 surface-to-air missile system that it can use to engage helicopters and aircraft. Russia can also mount a pair of artillery weapons on the vessel, such as a 76.2mm AK-176M heavy machine gun or a pair of 57mm A220 guns. In other words, this anti-submarine vessel is surprisingly versatile, and Ukraine doesn't want to see Russia take advantage of that versatility in the Black Sea. Now, Russia can't. 2 of its Project 1124M have been taken out. At the time of United 24 Media's report, satellite imagery had confirmed that 5 warships had been hit, but only 3 were known about. We now have more information on the 2 other ships. That information comes courtesy of Euromaidan Press, which reveals that ship number 4 on Ukraine's list of targets on March 1st and into 2nd was the Admiral Essen. One of Russia's frigates, the Admiral Essen, was struck almost dead center by one of Ukraine's drones, causing a detonation of the ship's PK-10 passive countermeasure launchers, which are supposed to deploy thermal decoys and chaff to hide the warship away from enemies. I guess that didn't work out, did it, Putin? In a March 5th update, the Kyiv Post confirmed that the Admiral Essen had been hit. It added that Ukraine struck the ship so hard that it's no longer able to fire its Caliber cruise missiles. That's huge for Ukraine because Russia has been using Novorossiysk's relatively close proximity to Ukraine to strengthen its constant missile and drone barrages. Caliber cruise missiles have played a huge role in these attacks. We saw that on February 7th when the New Voice of Ukraine reported on a massive Russian strike targeting Ukraine's power grid. Russia used 24 missiles in that attack, and some of them were Caliber missiles. Were those missiles launched from the Admiral Essen? We may never know, but Ukraine has just made it so that Russia definitely won't be able to use its frigate to fire more Caliber missiles anytime in the near future. The Kyiv Post adds that Ukraine's drone strike also destroyed the Admiral Essen's grenade launchers in addition to damaging the TK-25 electronic warfare, or EW system, that creates interference and is capable of detecting radar radiation. That's more big news for Ukraine. Another EW system down means that Russia has fewer defenses at its Novorossiysk base, which opens up even more opportunities for Ukraine to strike in the future. Ukraine even took out part of the frigate's anti-aircraft missile guidance system, which means it can't even be useful to Russia now that it's been rendered a sitting duck by Ukraine. And that brings us to the final ship of the 5. But before we get to that, there's a lot more where this came from. If you're getting value from the military show, don't forget to subscribe so you always stay ahead of the curve. Finally, we have the Molniya missile boat, which Euromaidan Press says is a Project 1241 warship. Ukraine's drones scored direct hits on the stern section of that vessel, which it says houses the Molniya's engine room, main engines, diesel generators, and a pair of AK-630M 30mm artillery mounts the ship is able to use in close-range air defense encounters against the very types of drones that struck it. Russia built all of its Project 1241 ships during the Soviet era and completed construction of 80 of them between 1979 and 84. That doesn't mean that Russia has a vast stockpile of these warships ready to replace what Ukraine just destroyed. Naval Encyclopedia notes that most of the 80 were exported to other countries, so Russia has lost a missile ship that was part of an ever-dwindling stockpile. Our repeated mentions of the Molniya being a missile ship also clues you into the fact that it packs a lot more than the 30mm cannons. The ship can be loaded with SAN-5 surface-to-air man-pads, each loaded with 16 missiles that target aircraft and helicopters. These ships also have P-270 Moskit missiles, which are loaded into twin launchers on the upper deck. So, like several of the other ships that Ukraine obliterated during its March 1st raid, the Molniya is a versatile, albeit aging, powerhouse that was supposed to be better than anything Ukraine could deploy in the naval aspect of the war. Now it's another smoking ship among a fleet of 5 that Ukraine struck with drones. And given its age, along with the fact that Russia doesn't make Project 1241 ships anymore, there seems to be little chance that Russia will be able to repair the damage. To add a little bit of insult to this massive fleet-wide injury, United 24 Media adds that military analysts have observed what it terms a dark spot on the pier where the Project 1124 corvettes we mentioned earlier were located. That dark spot could indicate that Ukraine's drones also hit the pier, or they could mean that a fire caused by the strikes on Russia's warships spread to the pier itself, causing yet more damage. And believe us, there is yet more damage. a lot of it, as we'll be digging into toward the end of the video. But before we get into everything else Ukraine achieved at a naval port that was supposed to be as safe as any that Russia had in the Black Sea, let's take a look at what this latest strike means for Russia. One thing is for certain, whatever protection that Novorossiysk has isn't working. The entire point of relocating the most high-value assets in the Black Sea Fleet to Novorossiysk was to protect those assets against Ukraine's missiles and drones. The idea was to combine increased distance with better air defenses, along with the EW capabilities of some of the warships that made the journey, to prevent Ukraine from carrying out strikes like the one we've just seen. And in theory, it makes sense. Novorossiysk is significantly further east than the previous Black Sea Fleet base of Sevastopol, as there is about 300 kilometers or about 186 miles of distance between those two ports. Add the distance that Ukraine's weapons had to travel over the Black Sea to reach Sevastopol, and you see how distance comes into the equation. For instance, the export versions of the Storm Shadow missiles that Ukraine used to wreck some of the Black Sea Fleet during the earlier years of the war have a range of about 250 kilometers, 155 miles per the BBC. That puts much of the Black Sea and perhaps Sevastopol in danger. Novorossiysk, not so much. What Putin and his Kremlin cronies failed to account for is that Ukraine could build its own weapons capable of traveling far deeper than anything that it had when Russia started its withdrawal to Novorossiysk back in 2023. Now Ukraine has the likes of the Sea Baby, along with airborne drones that can travel hundreds or even thousands of kilometers. So a target that was once out of range is now very much within reach. Ukraine knew what was coming long before Russia figured it out. In fact, Russia never did figure it out. There would have been no warships in Novorossiysk if it had, though it's difficult to determine where else those ships could have gone without leaving the Black Sea theater entirely. In September 2025, the Ukrainian Navy spokesperson, Dmytro Pletenchuk, even warned Russia directly that keeping ships in Novorossiysk wasn't going to help. "We will destroy them right in there, and they understand that fully well," Pletenchuk said. Fast forward to mid-December, and Ukraine did what Euromaidan press dubbed the impossible. Ukraine's drones managed to disable a Russian Varshavyanka-class submarine in Novorossiysk in an attack that took out yet another Russian asset capable of launching Kalibr cruise missiles. If Russia hadn't heard Pletenchuk's warning, this attack made it extremely clear Ukraine had the means to strike the ships that Russia was trying to hide away in its far-flung port. Still, Russia did nothing. Ukraine took advantage of that fact on March 1st and into 2nd. With the December attack having exposed the frailties in Russia's Novorossiysk defenses, Ukraine had the blueprint for an even larger strike that has crippled yet more of the Black Sea Fleet. Russia couldn't stop any of it, and with another 5 warships down, Ukraine has opportunities to strike again and again. By the way, don't underestimate what this latest strike means for Russia in the Black Sea component of its war strategy. That strategy was already on the verge of being ruined before Ukraine carried out its latest strike. As Defense Express reported in a February 26th article, the Black Sea Fleet had already been functionally crippled long before the Novorossiysk attack. At least 25 of Russia's warships had been taken out by the end of February, amounting to about a third of the entire fleet's power. You can now add another 5 to that list. Its ability to project maritime power in the region and beyond has been severely constrained, as it's continuously compelled to adapt its tactics in a diminished operating environment, the outlet said of Russia's once feared fleet. Russia is well aware of its own Black Sea failings, not that it can do anything worthwhile about them. Heads have rolled in Russian naval command over the whole thing, and it seems like the Black Sea Fleet's current commander, Sergei Pinchuk, is walking on very thin ice after reports surfaced toward the end of January that the Kremlin was weighing the option of stripping him of his power. But there will be no point. Russia's only option now is to keep its warships out of the Black Sea and as far away as possible. Pinchuk could be turned into the latest scapegoat for the country's Black Sea blunders, but whoever follows him still faces a Ukrainian problem for which there are no answers. Ukraine can hit Novorossiysk. There's nowhere else for the fleet to go but so far away that the one use that it still has, which is launching missiles at Ukraine from port, disappears. All of this brings us back to something we mentioned several times already. As devastating as it is for Russia to lose 5 more warships from the Black Sea Fleet, Ukraine's horde of at least 200 drones did even more damage than we see on those ships. The Ukrainian General Staff confirmed that in a March 2nd post where it revealed everything else that it managed to hit in Novorossiysk during the strikes that occurred the night before. Ukraine's drones found their targets at the Shaskaris oil terminal, which is a timely reminder to Russia that Ukraine isn't letting up on its strategy of destroying Russia's most profitable industry. United 24 media reports that a fire broke out at the complex, with the General Staff adding, "According to preliminary information, the damage to the terminal's oil tankers and the radar station from the S-400 complex has been confirmed." As important as the loss of more oil is, it's the S-400 going down that is key for Ukraine's future strategy. That's another air defense system that could have stopped Ukraine's drones and missiles from striking Novorossiysk, taken out of the picture. And that means yet more aerial corridors opened up that could result in the early March strike being a precursor of things to come, rather than a peak for Ukraine. Euromaidan Press adds more, stating that Ukraine also managed to destroy the guidance radar for an S-300, as well as a Pantsir S-2. That's 2 more air defense systems down. We don't need to repeat what that means. And coming back to the oil facility itself, the same outlet says that Ukraine managed to take out 6 of the Sheskharis terminal's oil loading berths. Those berths would have been receiving oil that passes through Crimea and ends up in Ukraine. With only one left, Russia is going to struggle to keep its troops supplied on the ground for the next few days at least. And finally, there are also casualties, at least 17 of them in fact. Euromaidan Press reports that 3 of Russia's sailors were killed in Ukraine's overnight strike, with a further 14 being wounded. We'd say that these are sailors that Russia isn't going to be able to use anymore, but with so many of its warships being turned into smoking wrecks, that was already pretty much the case. What we have here is a strike unlike anything that Ukraine has pulled off before. Ukraine has taken out Black Sea Fleet ships in the past, but never 5 in one night. It has hit Novorossiysk before, but never as hard as it hit the port on March 1st and 2nd. This is an attack that will be remembered for years, and that means it reminds us of what Ukraine pulled off on the ground in Siversk just a few weeks before. That was another operation, albeit a completely different one that will go down in history once the war is over. You can find out all about it by watching our video, and if you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe so you catch all of our coverage of Ukraine's latest and greatest strikes. And thank you as always for watching.